Welcome. It has just gone 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday the 30th of January, and you are watching episode 120 of Regional Wrap. Regional Wrap providing an insight on the issues affecting regional Australia and giving a voice to regional residents. My name is Bill Bates, and joining me on this episode, Government Guts Industry, are my guests Jack Bawden, Mayor of Carpentaria Shire Council, and David Wren, co-owner of Wren Fishing. Jack has been the Mayor of Carpentaria Shire since 2016, and he is also the Chair of the North Western Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils and a member of the North West Queensland Regional Roads Group. In his day job, Jack runs a mechanical workshop in Normanton. Jack was born in Bawden at Maryvale Station and was educated in Bawden, Mount Isa and Charters Towers. He has lived in northwest Queensland all of his life, working in Mount Isa, Richmond, Corumba and Normanton. Jack's practical exposure to the challenges faced by communities gives him a perspective that could not be acquired by academic qualifications. He actively promotes the needs of the Carpentaria Shire at every form and level of government. David is an intergenerational professional fisherman. He took to fishing in Proserpine while undertaking his carpentry apprenticeship to supplement his income. In 1989, he moved up to the Gulf of Carpentaria and started barramundi fishing. It was a tough start, working out of dinghies and living rough, while saving enough to build his first boat, the FV Felix the Cat, a boat he still owns, though it is somewhat modified today. His brother Frank moved to the Gulf, and together they formed a partnership, fishing alongside each other, and over the years adding to their fishing business. They have pooled resources, both financial and personal, into the growing the business and acquired license that allowed them to be the only fishers in what is now known as the N12 offshore net fishery. Having 3 boats and licenses in this fishery, Wren Fishing ensures its sustainability with regular catches year in and year out. In recent years, Wren Fishing has also purchased boats and license to catch mackerel in the inshore fin fishery. Welcome, Jack and David.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. If I could start off with you, David, in regards to if you could give us a bit of background. We've discussed a little bit there, but more about in the last, say, 10 years, how the fishing industry has been chuffing along in the Gulf of Carpentaria and what challenges it's currently facing.
Well, and so in the last 10 years, the commercial fishers in the Gulf have always been guided by our fish managers and scientists, and whatever they've recommended we've always adhered to, and that's longer closures, bigger nets, so we let the smaller fish go. We've done everything that the fish managers have asked us to do, and they've brought in some national green zones, national parks, some river closures. We've done all that, and we've always adhered to it for the better of the fishery. So, the Gulf of Carpentaria fishermen have done a lot for research and to make it sustainable for their own businesses and for their kids' businesses. So and now to look like losing the whole lot, for what reason is we're trying to. Everybody's struggling to understand. We can't be given a real reason why they want to shut us down like they did on the East Coast, where those poor buggers all went to work one morning in the afternoon, but they had no job. And then and then it's flowed on around to the Gulf, to us here, to where it is today. We don't know whether we're going to have a fishery this season or not. So yeah, it's pretty tough for everybody at the moment, real tough.
What
The
sort of
season is supposed to start on the 1st of February, so some are going, some aren't. They're saying that it's all going to be implemented by the 31st of March, which seems a really odd. So yeah, people are struggling in the Gulf here in the commercial sector, terribly.
So what's the sort of past sort of catches as far as quantities and species, and how's that changed over the last decade?
Oh, the fisheries are healthy as it's unbelievable how good the fisheries are. The last several years have been amazing, and prices, have got up where they need to be. And I think most barra fishermen, everybody's happy for what they're getting for their product these days. Catches are good. So it's very difficult for them to understand why we're at this crossroads now as to whether they got a job or they don't have a job.
The other thing is sort of how many people have moved out of the industry, say, in the last 10 years?
No, I'd say there'd be there's 83 active N3. N3 is your barramundi licence, and then you've got our fishery, which has got 3 licences in it, the N12. Out of that 83, I'd say you would have 40 participants, barra fishermen. They could be working, 1, 2 or 3 licences. A lot of the older fishermen are obviously retired or passed away, so it's a natural flow of things. There's not very many young people coming into the industry anymore. Basically, why would they? We've got some, but not a lot to what they used to be, 20 years ago. But it's pretty tough out there at the moment, real tough actually.
Just coming over to you, Jack, in regards to the whole Shire, I mean, the whole Shire's only got about 1,900 to 2,000 people in it. Have you seen a drift away of population because of changes in fisheries and other agricultural ventures, or are you hopeful there's been growth in the last 10 years or so?
Well, we have a very slow growth. It's only a small percentage. But my worry is we haven't seen any decline as yet. But if this happens, if this goes through with this closure, then it's going to have a devastating effect on not just Carumba, but it'll also affect Normanton, Croydon, Etheridge, as in Georgetown, all those towns along the road, because it's not just a few fishermen that are being affected here. It's a whole supply chain. It's a whole community, and they're all part of the support industries. You take away the fishermen from Jones Marine, who's our outboard expert. He also does aluminium welding, fabrication, all that sort of stuff. You leave the tourism to him, and you take away the fishermen, you've at least halved his income for the year. So straight away he's going to have to put someone off or scale down. It's a really bad snowball effect that's going to happen. You take 5 kids or 4 kids out of our state school, and you're probably going to lose a teacher. You take 3 families or 4 families out of town, you may lose a medical, like a health nurse or something like that. And this is, I'm not just dreaming here, this is reality. This is what's really going to happen. And it's, like I say, you got freight companies electricians, mechanics. It'll affect us all, and it's going to affect our incomes. And when you think about it, what annoys me is the fact that there's been no consultation. There's been the fishermen haven't been invited to the table. Nobody's been invited to the table. It's just a letter that's come out, and this is how it's going to be. Well, that's wrong, and precautionary. What's the word, Dave? Precautionary principle.
Precautionary principle. That's correct. They live by that as the Queensland managers, because they don't. They haven't done their homework. They haven't done their research. So, as Jack said, they use precautionary principle.
And they've got no evidence. They've got no data. They've got no evidence. They're just going to chuck this in there as an excuse to shut a fishery down. You know, there's places where I don't have a problem with, like my counterpart on Mornington. He wants Mornington left alone. Well, that's fine. That's his patch. That's his deal. Leave it alone. Don't drag him into it. There's other places that have issues and have genuine reasons. Well, that's fine too. But bring everyone to the table so that it can be discussed and sorted out. Just don't shut us down. It'll shut the Gulf down.
With you, David, you also got processing, and you also got freezers and cool rooms that other people can use as well. So, what sort of workforce does that support, and what does it support in regards to transport? How is that catch and that processed fish moved from Corumba to the markets?
Well, there's a couple of things there. We do fresh fish once the season starts, the season starts on the 1st of February, and then we do approximately 10 tonne of fresh fish out of here a week, and that goes transport, a local transport company. He picks it up from here, across to Cairns, and then it goes down the East State, and then some actually goes across to Darwin as well. So it goes. So the Gulf fish goes from across to Darwin, across to Cairns down to Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. So yeah, it goes a long way. And then during the prawn season, the MPF uses this facilities as an unload. Last year there was 2,500 tonne of prawn come over the wharf, and then through the factory, all palletised, and then that's all trucked south, either to Cairns, Townsville, or Brisbane to be stored. Then we've got our own, fish. There's 1,000 tonne a year. Our own fish that comes across the wharf. That's all trucked out. So yeah, it's the freezer. We've got a 400 pallet freezer room here, full of locals to use, and the facilities. We've got four ladies portion fish every day. They do 1,000 kilos a day in our processing factory, back into portions ready for the fish and chip trade. So yeah, it's a massive. Everyone that comes here are genuinely surprised at our facilities here when they come here and actually see it. It's very impressive what goes on here. People don't realise how much does happen here. So to shut this fishery down, it's going to affect a lot of people. The flow-on effect is just phenomenal. It's hundreds and hundreds of people.
Just coming back to you, Jack. You've been in the northwest for all your life. Would you say you're disappointed with the development and the growth of Northern Australia? I mean, actually 2024 marks the 10th anniversary of the white paper for the development of Northern Australia. Well, and we have a annual report on that development of Northern Australia. Oh, what have you seen that the governments, state and federally, have done to develop the north and make it grow?
That's a bit of a sore point, Bill. Probably nothing. I've been to a lot of talk fests. I've been to a lot of brain teasing exercises and all the rest of it. And the last one I went to, I suggested that they probably should be backing the local existing industries rather than talking about what can be done. The first thing you got to do is stabilise your existing industries, and this is the prime example of not delivering. They don't want to know about it. Let's be honest about this. Commercial fishing is just another primary industry, and it's not, in this day and age. No, it's not sexy, but neither is a Brandon Cradle or a bloody Spain bale or a piggery, a bacon factory. But the fact is they feed the country, they feed the nation. The whole primary industries, all of the primary industries feed the nation, and they do it with very little thanks, I might add too, because everyone seems to be against it. My question is, when the Greenies finish with the commercial fishermen, where do they go then? They've already started on the grazing industry, on the cattle industry, sheep. Where do we go? What's going to happen? And where do we buy our fresh seafood from? You won't. It'll either come from overseas or it'll come from farms. And David can probably go on a whole lot more than me, but it's under-regulated. It's high in mercury and all that sort of rubbish. We've got a term for it that I won't use on this about what sort of fish they are, but it's not good. They're not actually good for human consumption, but that's where it's going to go. That's what's going to happen. And it's uneconomical. I was told by someone a whole lot smarter than me the other day that to farm a fish or farm a farm product is double the amount of protein you've got to feed them to get the same amount back out of that farm, whether it's a prawn or a fish or whatever. It's just not, it doesn't make sense.
Well, my issue with the development of Northern Australia is the government should not, I'm not talking about looking after particular industry, but providing the infrastructure so industry can grow. I mean, just basic infrastructure like 24-hour, 356 days, 66 days a year, weatherproof roads. I mean, we're a long way from that. We've got, we've had these last couple of natural events, and it's not as though they're rare or anything. And we've lost the bridge next to Georgetown that's holding up that route. We regularly have flooding across so many other roads, and just around Cairns and Townsville, we've had, and we even have things like the Bruce Highway being closed as a regular occurrence. That's not investment in the north. That's where I presume the original intention of the white paper for development in Northern Australia was to put the infrastructure there so the communities and private industry could create wealth and grow northern Queensland and Northern Australia in general. But we don't even seem to be getting basic infrastructure like good roads, water projects, or anything like that. We're getting nil. Is that one of the greater disappointments of the people that you associate with Jack in the Shires, especially amongst the other mayors and that?
Yeah, Bill, I have to be honest here. We do pretty well with roads. I mean, we live on a floodplain. Let's be honest about it. So you're never going to make it flood-proof, but we accept it. But that's acceptable. What we can't accept is the lack of telecommunications. Like my reception here now, I don't know how I'm coming across, but you guys are cutting in and out the whole time. So I don't even know whether you can understand me or not. That sort of thing is
Yeah, we're fine with
sorry,
cutting
mate.
out now. Yeah, but yeah, well, that's fairly easily remedied. I mean, the technology that's available today is, can get around any of those sort of problems if you're provided to put the investment into it. So I think that's one of the issues in regards to the overall development of the north. I see the potential for Northern Australia to grow and create wealth as a greater opportunity than there is in the southern states. I think we've got plentiful water supply, we've got plenty of resources, we've got plenty of fish in the sea. So just coming back to you, David, Australia is an island continent. We're surrounded, I think we've got overall about 34, including all the islands, about 34,000 kilometres of coastline. But our fishing industry is minuscule, really, for the resources we have access to. How come Australia never become a great fishing nation? It's sort of beyond me in regards to, with all this coastline and all the water out there and the resources, we haven't been a leading fisher country in the world.
Well, we are. We're great. We're good at what we do, exceptionally good, and that goes right around Australia. But for Australia imports $2.1 billion from 97 countries around the world, and most of that is from Asia. So they're saying that there's DAF says that there's 62% of eligible seafood by weight is imported. And exactly, Bill, why? Why?
Well, that's what I was alluding to. We might have the fishermen who can do it, but we don't seem to provide the
government's policies
to allow them to actually, sustainably get the most out of the resources we got. I mean, I would hate to think what Indonesia pulls out of the ocean compared to us. I mean, they'd just be out there every day ripping everything they could out of the system and outstrip us in tonnage by far.
That's right, exactly. Because each, and it's not only Queensland, it's right around Australia, Western Australia. They just make it too tough for fishermen. It's too expensive. They just give up. The legislation's too tough. These days, you've got to have an accountant and a desk clerk working for you full time just to fill in all the paperwork that you have to do, logbooks and where you fish, and you got VMS on the boats, and now we've got to have cameras on the boats. People just give up. It's just got too hard. So that's why we don't have. I believe the governments just don't want fishermen there anymore. They just want to farm it and import it. And they just, I've got no answer. That's exactly why.
Well, that's getting the same way with just general agriculture and primary industries like grazing and farming and cereal cropping and cane farming. There's now, I suspect, the number of hours you have to pour into keeping records and providing data for the government would eat up at least probably one worker for a substantial business. So I don't, and this is the thing that sort of I can't quite get my head around. There doesn't seem to be any legislation coming out of Brisbane or Canberra in the last 12 years that's made life better for any primary producers.
Oh, exactly right. It's made it worse. That's what I was saying before. People are just giving up. They just give up. It's just got too hard. So they've just given up and they'll just go and get an easier job. Definitely. I was going to say, you know, they all come up with these catchy phrases these days, and the one that makes me laugh all the time is sustainability. They think they invented this word, our fish managers, and our ministers. They all love to use it. That's what they hide behind. Well, fishermen have been greenies their whole life. They aren't going to go out there and rape and pillage and then have nothing to catch the next year and the next year. They didn't know it, but 20 and 30 and 40 years ago, they were actually being sustainable because they would go and harvest one area and then they'd leave that and they'd go and do another area and then, we might swap over and go and catch a few mackerel, leave the barra, and then they go and do something else. Then they'll go and do something crabbing, and that was all about being sustainable and letting their crops regrow. But these days, all the managers have forced everybody into having to choose what they're going to do. They're going to be either a crabber or a barra fisherman or a mackerel fisherman or a line fisherman. They forced them into that, and that put more pressure back onto all those particular fisheries because none of those fisheries get a rest anymore. So for us, it's an absolute joke when you hear about all that they spruik off sustainable and for their future population and future generations. Fishermen have been doing this for years and years and years and years, and they mightn't have the degrees behind their name, but they know what they were doing, and they know. Just because you go and put a net out in the water doesn't mean you're going to catch anything. And you get all these conservation groups that they get all the grants, and they think that it's just easy. They get all these grants to go and do a study on, say spear-toothed shark or saw shark or whatever. And so they go and put a net out. They don't catch anything. They think, oh my God, there's nothing here. There's no fish here. Yeah, they're all extinct. Exactly. But but it's not the case. You've got to know what you're doing, and commercial fishing are very good at it. It's to be a good barramundi fisherman. I've always said you've got to be born and bred to it. Your granddad's got to have done it to teach you, and to be perfectly honest, you need to, because who wants to go and live up a creek and mud and sandflies and mosquitoes and the humid, wet weather like it is now, pouring down rain, getting up in the middle of the day to go and bail the dinghies out because they're sinking, and it's a job for everyone.
For instance, it wouldn't be me, and
No.
I bet you it wouldn't be any of those people in the concrete jungles of Canberra or Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane who'd want to get off their butt and come up to where you live and have a look at what's going on properly. But the other thing I'm very concerned about, this is going back a few years, and I was particularly taking interest in the Vegetation Management Act and the amendments to it. And that legislation, the original drafting that came out from the Australian Conservation Society. If you go back and look at their records, most of what was in that legislation was drafted by them. And the other thing that was interesting, a guy called Nick Heath, who was with the WF, and then he was with Australian Conservation. He became the Chief of Staff for the Minister of Environment, Scanlon, and she was the first term minister, elected and a minister in the first term. And there's been others imported into bureaucracy from those organisations. Now, when you've got your bureaucracy filled with ideologues like that, you're going to get legislation and regulations that tailored to their ideology. And that's what we seem to be getting out of Brisbane in particular, with all the legislation aimed at primary industries. And they're obviously got so much time on their hand, they can just sit there and write all this stuff up, and then just make decrees on the livelihoods of all people in primary industry.
Bill,
It's, really targeted against primary industry.
yeah, Bill, with this, there's no doubt about it in my mind that it's politically driven. It's all about the green vote. Mark Perner, I've got a lot of time for. I think he's a decent bloke. To be quite frank about it, he's been handed a shit sandwich, and he's got to make the best of it that he can. Now, whether he's going to surround himself with WWF staff to push it through, I don't know. But the way he's handling the sandwich at the moment is not good, and it's going to affect a whole region. And it'll affect North Queensland, not just Carpentaria. I mean, it'll have a big effect on Carpentaria, yes, but it'll also affect all the way over to Cairns, Townsville, and further south. You can find Wren product down south everywhere because that's the way he's marketed, and that's the way it is. My brother sent me a photo of Raptors prawns in Melbourne the other day. I said, "Did you buy some?" He said, "No, I had to sell a kidney." But the fact is, they're down there, and it's wild caught, and it's fresh or frozen or whatever. But it's genuine. It's the genuine Australian tucker that's wild caught, and it's put on your table by these guys. Now, they're also our watchdogs, our eyes. You talk to Border Force, give them a call and ask them how valuable the fishermen are, the pro fishermen are up here in the Gulf, because they're under-resourced. They've got no idea on what's going on, except these blokes keep them in the loop. If they see anything going on, they let them know. The Border Force think the world of them. But is that mentioned anywhere? No, it's not. And it comes back to what I said earlier. Sorry, I got to slip this one in, mate. Developing Northern Australia needs to look after what they've got before they start planning almighty great things.
Okay. I mean, this started off really years ago with protection of the Great Barrier Reef, the implementation of more green zones and no fishing zones, a lot of restrictions. I mean, for the last 2 years, we've seen the reduction of quotas on fish, especially mackerel on the east coast. It's moved into barramundi, and I think it was also mentioned in those first early days that the impact of reducing the number of fishermen, did impact on the surveillance that on other fish, foreign fishing boats and that. So it is something that we're going to lose more and more if we cut back on our fishermen and our licenses, and it just gives the opportunity for foreigners, foreign nationals in their little crazy boats, taking more and more of our stock and getting in and out. But the other thing is, you'd have to also worry if you look at the relationship now between the PNG and China, and the talk in regards to setting up processing plants and that just on I think it's Daru Island or something in Indonesia. Surely the Chinese are not going to come to there and not fish, sort of thing, you know. So it's a bit of a worry that we're sort of making this space available to them if we take away our own fishermen from the landscape or the seascape.
Yeah, and the other thing is,
Absolutely.
sorry, David, the other thing is, where do all those fish go anyway?
Well, if we're not there to catch them, I'm sure someone else is going to have a go at it.
Yeah, definitely.
Just moving on to gill nets. What's the provocation in regards to the animosity, it seems, to gill nets? Are they some sort of some nasty, torturous weapon or something against fish, or what's the sudden or
Oh,
on gill nets?
the bad, really bad publicity that they've always had is the walls of death. You know, where where those longliners were running hundreds and hundreds of kilometres of it, and you know, it was all Greenpeace, and you know, everyone seems to think that that's what we do, but it's nothing like that. You know, we haven't seen. Actually, last year there was the first net for many years. You know, it might have been about 7 or 8 tonne of that net. It was all bunched up Indonesian net floating out in the Gulf here, and one of the trawlers brought it in. But it used to be very common to have big tons of net just washed up on the foreshores along the beaches through the Gulf here, and that's what the longline drift netters. That's what they were. But you know, they were hundreds of kilometres long. You know, all baronets are only like, you know, a long baronet might be 60 metres. That's it, and most of them are only about 30 metres long, and they, you know, they've got a attendance rule, and they're always run quite regularly. Our nets are always attached to our boat, and so they're always in attendance. So yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't know. It's just a public perception of how it's been put to the public, but there's just some types of fish that can be that's the only way they can be caught. You just can't do them commercially any other way. So that's what BAF are saying now, that you just go and do it in a more sustainable way. But they can't tell us how. You can't go and line catch barramundi commercially. You just physically can't do it. Our grey mackerel, you can't physically make it commercial out of line catching them like you do with Spanish mackerel. The only economical way that you can catch them is with gill nets. So yeah, and as long as you do it right and you're sustainable, yes, we do have interaction with TEPs. We've never hide that fact. It doesn't mean that they're always they're released alive. Always we've got we do courses on how to handle saw sharks and release them alive. Turtles, well, I could say that we never get a dead turtle because they might get caught in the net. You just they come on board, put them in recovery position, let them have a little rest, and they'll just start flapping around. When they're ready, you just let them release them. So sharks are just so thick and plentiful in the Gulf, in the GOC. It's just, but we don't go out and target shark anymore because politically they've just become too hard. So how we target shark is that, you know, where all the trawlers are working, we'll go and work amongst all the trawlers, and they'll bait us up on their last shot in the morning. So that's targeting shark, and you know, you can fill your boat up in a few nights. It's so many sharks, just countless thousands of them. So a lot of these species maybe, and I don't honestly know, maybe or, you know, under threat in other parts of the world, but they're certainly not in the GAC. You can pretty much walk on the backs all the way to Weeper. The sharks are so thick in the Gulf. I certainly wouldn't like to fall over, I can tell you that. It wouldn't be.
Well, it seems with your gillnet fishing, the nets are fairly short anyway. Like you say, they're under observation all the time that they're out there. So you've got a good overview what's going on, and I presume they're hauled in regularly. So you've got the best opportunity for bycatch to be saved and released, sort of thing. So that seems to me to tick a lot of boxes. How come we can't convince the powers that be, or they're just not interested in coming and finding out? Like spend a couple of nights out on the boat and things like that and see what actually goes on. Is there just no taste for that from the people who are making these rules?
I'm seriously doubt you get anyone from Brisbane come up here, as we said before, Bill. I just don't think it would happen. And as Jack said before, it's just politically, 100% politically. It's just politically driven. Look at what happened just recently with COVID. You know, it brought the whole world to its knees. You know, us living in Currumbin, we wouldn't have known. It never affected us like how we lived in any form whatsoever. A small community. We never had one case in here in Currumbin. Obviously, we're at the end of the road, so nobody can get in. But you know, for us, we just changed our packaging. So instead of doing bulk packs, we just changed it to small. We did thousands of, I'd say millions of small packages, like 500 gram and 1.5 kilos, and that's how we market it. But the thing is, that's what fed Cairns and everywhere else, because it got distributed so people could cook it at home. Now, wouldn't they take notice of that? Like, you know, COVID brought us to our knees, the whole world to its knees, and we need industries to be able to support us if we can't import it. So you've got to have, but it doesn't appear to. They just want to get rid of us. We just want to be gone. Although all they're interested is in tourism on the Great Barrier Reef. That's what they want. They don't want primary production. They just do not want it. They just want us gone.
Well, I'm not a real fan of the tourist industry. I think that's, if you look at Australia's tourism, I think our tourist industry brings in about $8 billion from overseas visitors and that. But Australians going overseas take out 29 billion. So it's not really a great industry. And then it's not a very good high paying industry as well for a lot of the jobs. And I'm sort of over the Great Barrier Reef. It's fine. It can look after itself. It doesn't need the nursemaiding that people make out it needs to. Do you see, as they move along, and if they're successful with these bans, do you think they will turn their attention to something else like the prawning industry over time?
Oh, absolutely. When they made that announcement last year, I was talking on ABC radio. One of the comments I made, because they're asking me, you know, about what happened on the East Coast, and one of the comments I made was, "What do you think they're going to stop there?" And I didn't think they'd come after us so quickly. I thought, you know, we're in the Gulf. We all move to the Gulf because it's the last frontier, and we get away from society and all the rest of it. But it's all caught up with us now, and you know, we've all got internet on the boats and Skynet and whatever the rest of the crap is, and phones and all the rest of it. But yeah, they came after us pretty quick. And then you're right. The MPF will be next, 100%. As soon as they're done with us, they will start on the Northern Prawn Fishery, MPF, and then it won't stop. It just will not stop until there is no commercial fishing left in Australia.
Well, that seems a pretty sad indictment of our governments, I'm afraid, because surely our governments, one of their main job is to realise a dividend for out of our land and our seas. If if we don't get a dividend out of it, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be monetary for a lot of it. It can be amenity or and I don't mind them saving some pristine landscapes or whatever that. But to my way of thinking and being a little bit blunt, I think a lot of Australia is pretty harsh country, and I don't see that we need to keep so many millions of square miles as that harsh country, by letting nature decide what happens. I think human involvement in the landscape in many ways can improve both the looks of the country, the production of the country, and the amenity of the country. But it seems now we've got this group of people in government who want to see us regress to basically there's people aren't no longer in the regional landscape. I mean, to me, it seems to be happening on the Cape for some time, the buying up of land and locking it up. The attack on primary industry is making it difficult on farmers and graziers to manage their own land. And of course, the fishers have been under attack for about the last 3 years. It's a fairly sustainable attack for the last 3 years. So it beggars belief that you have governments that are sort of, looking to make the country regress.
Yeah, which brings us back to developing Northern Australia, mate. Every time they let us down, every time. How can you develop something if there's no input into it? It's ridiculous. Like these.
And how can you sustain it if you're taking people off the land?
Exactly. And like these guys they don't expect a free ride. They're happy to negotiate and everything. They just want to come to the table. They just want to be asked to the table so that they can thrash it out. Bring your scientific evidence if you've got it. Otherwise, listen to what they've got and take it on board. It's pretty simple, really, and they're not asking to change the world. They're just asking to be invited to the discussions. And time's running out, like Dave said earlier. It's now February, not far away, and all this is supposed to be settled by the end of March. Well, there's not much time left for them to do it, and if they think the problem's going to go away, then it ain't.
So David, in regards to this sort of March date, if there is no compromise, negotiation, or common sense taking part, does that mean you actually got to be forced into closure? The way that the messaging is coming, there is no room whatsoever for you to move, and basically the whole assets that you'll build up over your lifetime are basically going to be become far less valuable and maybe eventually worthless if they eventually get into the prawning industry and you can't even sort of provide backup to the prawn industry during that season. But where does it leave? Like, how do people go? How do you go to sleep at night? And all the other fishers up there in regards to, what comes after March, as far as my family and my ability to feed them?
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. They won't even talk about suicide anymore. They what is it? What do they call it?
Mental health.
Mental health. Yeah, mental health. That's what they call it now. Mental health. They won't even discuss suicide. That's how bad it's got. If you're mental health, and it's terrible, isn't it? They know what happened, and that's what happened. There's quite a few. There was some when they had that in the beef industry. And they're going to put all these dollars into this mental health. You ring this number, it's just terrible. They just got, it's bad. It's just, and you're right. You got 45 years of work and it's not billed at less valuable. There will be no value to it. We've got 7 boats. They're all purpose-built boats. You know, all the values, all the housing values in town will just drop. Who's going to come and live here? I mean, I'm pretty sure, what's it now, Jack? It's is it 35% or 40% that you've got to have up front now for a house in this area code?
And the rest, mate, yeah, we're getting up
50%.
around the 70% now, 75 now, mate.
74, there you go. You have 75% of your capital there to buy. Now, you know, I've got all my family, my children, they've all invested in town because, again, we made our fishery very, very sustainable, and it'll be here for my grandchildren. But, you know, other people have got different ideas. They think that we shouldn't be here and we won't be here, and there's nowhere to go. There's nothing after this.
Where's the opposition on this? What
Well,
are they saying, and what's?
Well, you know, I'm going to take me hat off to Robbie Catter. Robbie Catter just jumped straight in, boots and all, just jumped straight in. He had some good dust ups there in Parliament. They were pretty good to watch. Went to the opposition, and yeah, they just won't touch it. It's 5 subjects, and they won't go outside them 5 subjects. They don't want to upset the Greens, and they won't touch it, which is a shame for us. You know, they got their direction. They're hoping to win the next election, but they won't touch it. We've had no support in any form whatsoever from the Liberal Party. Federally, we have Susan McDonald jumped on board, but this is a state problem. Federal started it, but because of the fish species are managed by the state, not federal. MPF is federal because they're managed by them, but our fish species are managed by state. So we've had no support at all from the Liberal side of things. Robbie Catt has been great. He's been asking a lot of questions, and in Parliament he's given us a couple of his time slots where he's allowed to ask questions. He's done that for us. So he's been, but pretty much that's about it. And ABC's given us quite a good bit of airtime, which has been good. You know, pretty much the general public's being conned here, right?
It boils down to there's 73 seats within 200 odd kilometres of Brisbane, and that's the focus of both the Liberal Party and the Labor Party is getting the most of those seats first, and after that it gives some consideration to regional issues maybe. Now you're talking about Robbie Catter. I mean, it's unfortunate, I suppose, that the Nationals and the Liberals amalgamated back in about 2006, 2008. We don't really have a national party with a wider maybe appeal than the Catters. I mean, the Catters are sort of a group. It's got a lot of support in certain areas. It has a bit of difficulty with marketing outside that sort of greater Kennedy area. But in a normal election, other than a sort of landslide, if a group of independents and the Catters and that, if they can win 7 seats, they can basically hold the balance of power. So to me, it seems like regional Queensland, and I'm not just talking about North Queensland, Central Queensland, and the Southwest Division. They really need to focus on getting people elected that's going to look after their particular interests. And if, like I say, if you can get a party that's biased towards the regions to get 7 seats or so, that changed the whole political landscape. It won't be such an easy cakewalk for the ideologues in Brisbane to get their way.
That'd be an ideal situation, Bill, but the reality is we're too sparse out here. The population's not big enough to be able to pull that stunt. I'm with you.
Yeah, but like I say, I mean, if like the Catters could actually make a bit of inroads to those 3 seats in Cairns and those 3 seats in Townsville, that would make a huge difference. I mean, you're pretty guaranteed they'll go into the next election and they'll keep their current 3 seats. And I would presume you'd get some support off of Steve Andrews, the One Nation member from Morani. So that's 4. So, if the Catters or some similar group of people can pick up, 3 seats in between Cairns, Townsville, Rockhampton and Mackay, and even in the southwest Queensland, we might have a bit of a bat against this attack on regional Queensland.
Yeah, I mean, and you never know your luck. We might have a hung parliament and Robbie might be the casting vote. So,
well, they came close in 2017. That's only that I think there was an independent Liberal guy who opted to become Speaker and guaranteed the Palaszczuk's minority government for that term. But there again, that turned to crap pretty quick because they lost Billy Gordon and Rob Pine within the first 12 months. So it became a very different dynamic then. But like I say, in normal elections, if there's, other than landslide, it's normally 7 seats by independents and minor parties can hold the balance of power. And that's probably the only way we'll get some returns. But if we get to 1st of April, say, we'll just call it April Fool's Day, get to April Fool's Day, and this is all comes into effect. We can never get the fishing industry back, do you think? There's no way that could be ever reinvented.
I don't believe so. Once you're gone, you're gone. Once legislation is changed, they always say it's pretty hard to change it back. Look at the mess they've got to clean up on the East Coast now. With all the, I don't know if you're up with these special licenses that they're going to issue for the next 4 years until 2027, and it's pretty bad.
Band-aid.
Beg your pardon?
Just a band-aid.
Yeah, well, it is. Nobody knows what's going. They're all, they're all scrambling. They don't have enough people. I think in the last 6 months, we've had 3 DGs, 2 deputy directors, and I think we're on our 3rd fish manager now. So we've still got the same minister though. He survived. He kept his seat.
Oh, there you go. But what's happened to the fishery industry is just something that's happened to the logging industry over time in native forests and that. And the gradual forcing out of loggers and that from the native forest has created a situation that we'll keep some mills and that going and some loggers going in regards to plantation and stock, but we'll never get back that opportunity to actually harvest and manage our landscape. In regards to that sort of situation, removing the human influence from our forests, all we're leaving it there for is to get overgrown and become just the victim of wildfires and bushfires in the long run. If we don't have managers on the sea, is there a possibility that there could be situations where different species sort of may fluctuate or be endangered by other species if they're not sort of regulated, or diseases getting in there that we don't know about?
Oh, absolutely. They found that in the trawl fishery there, that they worked out with bugs, Moreton Bay bugs there, that they actually found that it was actually better to harvest them because that generated the spawning. Within that, they, oh, we need to go and breed, we need more and more. So absolutely, you know, there's a lot that people just don't know. All this is purely people's opinion. They don't know because they haven't done the research. It's just the different scientists and different people has got agendas that they want to and conservation. So, but there's been no research. There's been very little research done, and most of the research that they do have has come from us anyway. You know, we've been very accommodating with taking people out in our boats and sending frames in and doing onboard monitoring, and we've done all that, you know, and we'll still do it. We're still doing it today to give them the best chance of understanding what's happening out there. But you know, if they, you know, if that's all going to stop. It's what you said before. Once we're gone, we're gone, and we won't be back. You know, it's a pretty harsh environment we've got in the Gulf out there, and a lot of very special people that do what they do, and they're very self-reliant. They don't need the Woolies and the Coles, and they don't need the latte shops and all that stuff. They go to sea, and some of them stay out most of the year. They only come in twice a year. How do you think these people are going to go interact back into society? Go and be I don't know, go and work at Bunnings or you know, we had a bloke in the office today. He's getting older. You know what's he going to go and do once they force
And the other thing is, but the problem is too, they also get dejected that their way of life has been destroyed, and that makes it that much harder for them to accept any sort of change. Look, we've gone over the hour, and I'd just like to sort of wrap it up. But with you, David, I'd just like to get an indication of the number of people that will be directly affected in Croomba, and directly affected by the fishermen, and those immediately around the area who will be affected indirectly as that fishing population is terminated.
Well, Wren Fishing employs 60 people in our organisation, and the flow-on effect is just hundreds and hundreds of people, hundreds. Like, you know, we'd put out 6,100,000 gram portions of fish a year. That's just what we do. Wren Fishing does 6 million portions. None of that gets exported. Most of that stays in Cairns, Townsville, maybe Mackay. All those portions just stay up there. So and there's some big businesses in Cairns, port that you know, fishmongers, ISP, Mackerelman, the boys up in Mareeba. You got Townsville. You got the coal stores, trucks. Oh, it's just the flow-on effect is enormous. Chandlery shops will close down. You know, already, as soon as they made that announcement last year, the biggest net supplier in Australia hasn't sold a net to today since last year. Nobody's contacted him. He's, you know, he's seeking legal advice now. And we've been buying net from him for, you know, 30, 35 years. We've been buying net from him. And once they made that announcement last year, that's it. Not one net got sold. Now, what happens to all that stock that he's got in place there now? What's he going to, it's going to break him. So maybe he's going to need to call mental health.
And I think the terrible thing is the people out of Brisbane don't care.
Don't care.
I mean, that's the most disappointing thing, that you're running a state or you're having input to develop a state and you don't care about what happens to people in productive industry. If I just move on to you, Jack, you've just heard David give an indication, well, he's got 60 staff and then all the other people that shoot off there. But for that flow down to Normanton, what's the sort of impact you think there, and how would it be to take, you've got about 1,900 people in the Shire, to take anywhere between 100 and 200 people out of your Shire, money earners, out of the Shire? What's the sort of likely impact of that?
Well, you can imagine, Bill. I don't even want to try and imagine it. It's like I said earlier. It'll be devastating to our local economy. You won't be able to sell a house. You won't be able to buy a house. Because it won't be a 70% or a 75% deposit. It'll be all up or nothing. So people are going to be, what are they going to do? It's going to be, do you walk off and leave everything behind that you've accumulated over bloody 30 years of living in the Gulf? You can't do it. Something, I don't want to change the subject, mate, but something that we haven't covered tonight is compensation. Now, fisheries could solve a lot of these problems with a voluntary buyback, and they could have their sustainable, if you want to call it that, industry without any dramas at all, because there's, as David said, there's a lot of younger generation not interested. The older fellas would be looking for a way out, and if they made the effort, they could buy these fellas out and leave the fishermen that want to keep fishing there, and it would have no impact on our local economy, because the same amount would be being caught, but you would have a whole lot of licenses that are being used and not being accounted for. You'd have them out of the system. They're not just, compensation's a funny word, you could compensate 83 barra fishermen, I think is the number. But what happens to all the support industries? Do you pay compensation to the boilermakers and the outboard mechanics and the fridgies and the electricians and the servos and the grocery shops and everything that are going to lose their income? Just buy the licenses and burn the bloody things. That'd be a simple way out in my book. I know nothing about fishing, but ask Granny.
Yeah, as long as we've still got people operating, at least catch a sustainable amount of fish and keep the industry going. But it does seem to be the way of the governments at the moment. I'm sure you've heard that there's cattle stations being bought up and locked up, the land locked up, people come off the land, and this is in regions that may, like, you've got 2,000 people in your Shire, but there's some shires that running 1,600 people or even under 1,000 sort of people, and you take a number of cattle stations and lock them up and take the people off in the support industries, and you lose 100 people out of your economy of 1,600 or 900. That's just devastating. But you've been around a long time, Jack. How do you sort of try to get this, or or just doesn't Brisbane want to talk to you? How do you get this through to the people down there?
I don't know, mate. Now that we're into a new year and everything's starting to hum along, we're just waiting to see what this next weather event's going to bring. We're just going to have to start trying to open doors again, kick some doors in Brisbane. The problem hasn't gone away, and by all accounts, they're not willing. There's been no word out that they're willing to ask these fellas to the table. So we're just going to have to keep campaigning, I guess, if you want to call, if that's the term for it, advocating. It's a pretty
Okay, gentlemen, it doesn't seem very promising to me. I mean, it just comes to me. It's just bloody mindedness from Brisbane. It's their way, and that's it. So I don't know how you get around this sort of situation where that they wield all the power, and we don't seem to be able to have any say in it, and they don't even give us the opportunity to have a say. That's the most worrying part.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's right, mate. I've done it. I did it. I've done it everywhere. I've done it to the dairy industry. I've done it to the tobacco industry on the tablelands. I've done it to the orchards. When I was just left school, we were drinking orange juice from the Philippines, and farmers were digging their orange trees into the ground down around New South Wales somewhere. I can remember it being on TV. Didn't change anything. It just happened. So, like Dave said, once they're gone, they're gone. We just got to try and stop that happening.
Well, I wish everyone the best of luck, but I don't see the larger industry on the east coast around the reef, and that seems to have been pretty well buttoned up. And like I was surprised that the Gulfs came so quickly. I'm sure, as David mentioned that, but they seem to be pretty well organised within the bureaucracy to move pretty fast to deliver what they want.
Yeah, Bill, the difference between the East Coast and here, the Great Barrier Reef and here, is the Barrier Reef has got a humongous tourist industry. Now it's recreational fishing. All the tackle shops were celebrating when the announcement was made. So they had a lot of support over there, the government. We've got nothing here. We've got a barely sustainable, if that's the word, tourist industry at the moment in Carumba. Now, if the pros go, then that tourist industry will crumble, and the wreck fishermen will find out that it's not going to be worth their while, because they're going to have to travel to the East Coast to have their boat serviced. They're going to have all these expenses that weren't there before, that they take for granted now. So, yeah, we've got a little bit of a tourist industry, but it's a wheel of supporting industries. We've got agriculture, we've got tourism, and we've got commercial fishermen. Now you pull one of them out, and there's going to be a collapse. There's no other way to put it. It's pretty dire.
I suppose the other thing that's sort of getting harder too is for the cattle industry to have live exports too. I suppose that's sort of under attack all the time. So that's another nail in the coffin for up that way.
Yeah, once they, like I said earlier, once they finish with the commercial fishermen and the prawning industry, then they'll start on the ag. Once they get the nets out, then they'll start on the agriculture side of it. And cattlemen are going to cop it again. There was actually suicides over their last ridiculous episode that they had back in, what was the name? Gillard's time.
Gillard's time, about 2014 or so, I think was the era. But yeah, look, gentlemen, look, I'd like to really thank you for making me depressed. Because, you know, I was hoping for some sort of hope or whatever, but I'm not getting that vibe. And the worst thing is, kudos to people like Robbie Catterfull stand up, but Jesus, it's a worry that none of our other North Queensland and Central Queensland members of Parliament sort of, side with the region, if you know whether they just seem to side with whatever policies are coming out of that Brisbane area. So it's a real worry.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's we've been pretty depressed for some time now, Bill. So welcome.
Welcome to the club, mate.
I was just hoping there was a bit of gun ho hope there, but I'm just not getting that. I'm afraid. Look, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. If you can just stay on the line for a while, I'll just introduce next week's show and just have a little chat off air, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, right on.
Thank you.
Okay, David and Jack, thanks very much for your participation tonight. Please, if you enjoyed tonight's show, like, share and subscribe to our Facebook page, and also to subscribe to our YouTube channel. My guest next week will be Ken Jury. We had him on in December talking about the Murray-Darling Basin and the river flow down to the lower lakes. We'll have an interesting conversation with him in regards to his investigation into returning the Lake Alexandrina in particular back to an estuarine environment, and we'll go through the past history, and we'll see photographs and instances from the 1920s and 30s when there was up to 40 fishing boats supported through mulloway fishing in that area. It's the push to keep it as a freshwater lake after the barrages, and the continual push to take water out of the Murray-Darling to keep that lake fresh is counterproductive. And we'll have a look at the plan to reinstate or make those lakes great again by returning seawater into those lake systems. So please join me next week with Ken Jury. Thank you.